Hi there, welcome to part 3 about comprehensive election frauds in the UK, and we're going to go on showing each of these elections and how ridiculous it is. But just to begin with, Sandy, if you could tell us what actually is fraud then, because I think it's often misunderstood just quite how, well, how much we are frauded, obviously. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we've been dumbed down, obviously, through our curriculum. Essentially, fraud is what a jury thinks fraud is. It's what ordinary people think fraud is. The plain and simple definition of it is when people mislead you, or someone misleads you, or misleads people in order to benefit themselves and or to disadvantage those people or other people. So it's simply misleading to benefit and or disadvantage. Obviously this can be in small circumstances. Most of us do it all the time in social situations, and sometimes it's justified because someone else has done something rather similar to us. So there are misdemeanors where we mislead or fraud, which you wouldn't be indicted criminally, and often there's justification for it. But so there are those small misdemeanors, and then of course there's felonies where it's much more serious, and then of course there's serious organised felonies where there are frauds, and then of course ultimately a systemic fraud, cartel fraud, in order to fraud all the UK's elections. By mainstream parties controlling the local elections and therefore in fact stopping anyone else getting involved and therefore protecting the whole oligarchy, which of course is also high treason because it's usurpation of government. So what we're talking about is a form of fraud which is usurpation of government and involves, it is essentially high treason. So that's what we're addressing here. That is what a jury will be asked to give a verdict on, and obviously a proportionate reasonable verdict on, and then of course a proportionate reasonable sentence, because the common law is always proportionate, it's always reasonable, and it if you're going to actually make it fix, it has to be on the record as well. That's simply what the common law actually is. It's always logical, it's always reasonable, it's always proportionate. If you find a so-called law which isn't behaving proportionately or reasonably and is being sneaky, it's probably not the common law, it's probably not the law. So we've done Allsworth, and so I'll now just move to the next one alphabetically of the uncontested elections, which is Anthony Crucis, 2015 election, Cotswold constituency, local election. Yeah, and note the same characteristics.
No description.
No description. They're not describing themselves.
How many have we got there? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hang on. 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 candidates.
7 candidates.
Yeah.
And then you have got with Anthony Crucis. You will see that there are
Anthony Crucis. Vacant seats. 7 seats? What a surprise. 7 vacant seats.
None of them declared a party, so they haven't come forward and truthfully told you that in fact they're coordinated and are actually an undeclared party with undeclared policies. So there we have it, very simply. And again, notice the very small relatively small electorate in Anthony Crucis of 507. And of course we'll be moving on to the larger electorates in due course. So that's again evidence of a bid rigging cartel fraud of the election. And as I've explained, the significance of the local elections, once they've rigged the local elections, that's where ordinary honest people would get involved if they rigged that. That's where they would start and get experience. So if the national parties rig that one, they've stopped ordinary people even getting started. It's
so
what's
that
called
means
a
everything comes from the top right down to the
This
bottom.
is what's called a gatekeeper fraud. And if they can stop people even getting involved in politics, turn them off, make them apathetic, because of course the man in the street says they're all the same. He's quite right. They are pretty much all the same. If they can turn you off at the beginning, of course, they then have the whole of the game to themselves. Next uncontested election for 2015 is Avening. And how many are there?
There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and again, no description of any kind whatsoever.
Right.
Yeah.
And I should add that this is slightly out of date because these are actually the number of candidates and electorates for 2011. They won't have changed very much.
Okay.
Lackadaisical of me. But significantly, you'll see Avening there has...
Avening, let's see. Avening.
I believe it's 9.
9 vacant seats.
9 vacant seats.
For 8.
For 8 candidates standing. So they get in uncontested. And again, that's too close for it not to have been coordinated. It can be spot on and it's just very obviously coordinated, but even just one or two either side with an electorate of 938 is beyond any form of coincidence. It just couldn't possibly happen. And you've noticed that this sort of very close thing, and again, it's uncontested. So basically they have closed down by operating these undeclared parties any competition at all. It's nobbling. Of course, they could create competition by declaring their parties, declaring their policies, running public primaries, running public hustings, and then people would know the electorate would suddenly have something to contest about. They'd be going, oh my God, those people stand for that? Oh, I don't like that, I'll stand. But if they all coordinatedly omit to declare parties, omit to declare policies, and then distort and say, oh, we're not part of any form of party or policy, then of course they can control it and attack anyone else. Coordinated, covert attacks against anyone else who do stand. Even if they get in, they're still going to be coordinated.
Well, as you said before, I think it'd be very unlikely that they'd be noticed very much because it's so hard for them to do the promotion on their own.
Well, in these small elections, they can do, but they could stand. And they could, even get their policies up, but it's going to be very difficult if they have got an undeclared party coordinating against them, because the undeclared party will get all their family, all their friends to vote for each other.
Right.
And so they're going to be 50, 60, 80 votes ahead of that genuine independent candidate, for better or worse, who is actually being more honest and not actually coordinating in deceiving the electors. So that was Avening. Next uncontested election is Barrington. Of course, this is a Tory heartland, and so a lot of these elections are very small.
Oh look, we've got something in the description box of this one. So it's for De Holdevang, Jan De Holdevang. She doesn't sound British, does she? Long-term local resident, director, LLP.
Yes, they're standing for political office. This is local political office, and about the only thing that you get declared is nothing political at all about what they're actually going to do for the next 4 years. It's, I'm a director, which is not really, it's actually really about the cult of personality rather than the cult of policies. And we should be, in a democracy, actually telling people our terms and conditions, what we intend to do for the next 4 years, not saying, vote for me, I'm a director, I will be looking after you for the next 4 years. And incidentally, I'm in an undeclared party with undeclared policies.
So how many have we got there? That's 5 for that one.
That's 5 for that one. And look to the sheet, and what is
Barrington?
Barrington saying
Is 5 vacant seats.
5 vacant
178 electors.
Yes, so undeclared, no declaration of party, and yet suddenly they're very, very coordinated in numbers, and there isn't an election contest. Very convenient. So we're now moving on to Bournemouth.
Okay, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 seats.
Right.
And just a description on one of them, which is Peter Allen Todd, independent.
Right. A lot of these independents are really rather bogus. So we move to Bournton's, Bournton there.
Bournton, yeah, just here, Bournton, and 7 vacant seats, 248 electors.
Right, so so they've got 6 candidates and 7 seats. So they're getting in with an out contest. And again, this is obviously very, very closely coordinated to the number of seats available. Something had occupied my mind. I can't think of what it was, but let's just move on to Beverston.
Beverston, yep, got that. And there's 4 candidates. No descriptions whatsoever.
Right. And Beverston on here.
Beverston, okay. And that's 5 vacant seats and 108 electors.
Right.
So one more.
1 too little candidates, so they get in uncontested. Again.
One more, isn't it?
No, this is there were
4 seats.
4 seats and 5 vacancies. So in they go. It's rather like rigging.
Oh, one less. One less candidate.
So in they get uncontested, and they haven't declared any parties, any policies.
Okay, we have to leave it there for this part, and we'll come back for part 4.